what I do want to talk about, and I'm much more excited about, is Edmonton. And I got to give it to Edmonton because you sent, and I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so here's this article about Edmonton changing the zoning bylaws in their municipality to accommodate kind of more current bylaws. This I'm excited about, Patrick, and I'll tell you why. And I know you're also all about it because, you know, you're Mr. Alberta and all. And I got to say, you know, in this case, Alberta being more progressive than most, and they're ahead of the game here because what's happening. And I just want to read one particular part of this and then we'll dig into it. But I want to give this context by reading this particular part. Hold on, I just got to find it right here. In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, a zoning bylaw was used more as a discriminatory tool against people of minority status. So that is one of the issues with zoning bylaw. The point here is that many, not many, let me restate, all zoning bylaws across the friggin' country are old, they're antiquated, and they no longer make sense. They have to be updated. And in Ontario, the government has stepped in and is literally shoving it down the throat of municipalities by forcing them with the recent legislation they just pushed through. But Edmonton is being progressive and they're getting ahead of this. And that's amazing for real estate investors, Patrick.
What they've done in this case is the infills. They've changed the zoning so that you can actually go in and not have to get it rezoned from residential to commercial, which opens up the door and the opportunity to put different, even small business in there. For example, we'll use a daycare center. It could be a lawyer's office, but they don't have to go through the hassle of going through the city to get it rezoned from residential to commercial so that you can actually go into a neighborhood. Now, what you're going to see now is kind of a mixed use neighborhood. And I think it's good for Edmonton. The big, I guess, I don't know that it's big, but I think one of the things that's on the table right now is has it been communicated well with Edmontonians. You know, you and I are going to talk a little bit about NIMBYism, and that's really what that is setting things up for. You know, somebody's commenting, well, I'm not sure everybody's on board with this. This was a zoning bylaw that was proposed by city workers. So, you know, that was something that we got to this morning is it's not some developer coming in and doing it. This is actually the city of Edmonton coming in and saying, let's rezone. Let's go from, I think, whatever it is, it's 12 or 17 different zones and bring that down to 6 or 7. And that is really a game changer. And it opens up the opportunity for a different level of development. And I think it's really healthy for the city.
I mean, it's very healthy for the city. Listen, I think we're seeing in Ontario what's going to happen if this doesn't happen. So, you know, there can be as much NIMBYism as people want, and you know, we can try to consider everybody's feelings and so on and so forth. And I understand there's certain things that do got to be considered. And let me tell you, these planning processes are so in depth. They consider everything and then some 3 times when they make these kinds of suggestions. And do they get it perfect? Hell no, not even close. But Patrick, there is a process in place. And like I said, I my hat's off to Edmonton for taking it on themselves from a municipality perspective, because if they don't, listen, it's going to be pushed down their throat the same way Ontario is doing it to every municipality in the city. The city's no longer in Ontario, which, by the way, that legislation just got royal assent. I think it was 2 days ago, which means it's now law. It's now a part of the legislation, which means that now across Ontario, no matter the bylaws, any investor or any homeowner can put up to 3 units on their property. Doesn't matter what the zoning is, even if it's an R1, if it's an R2, it doesn't matter. And what Edmonton is saying is, hey, listen, let's take control of this before the province forces us to do it. I think that's a really smart move.
Well, personally, anytime that you can take bureaucracy out of the equation, it's a good move. And I don't care what it is. You know, this was part of the problem with the zoning in Edmonton and going from residential to commercial. The bureaucracy that had to be dealt with for that rezoning was expensive and time consuming and really unproductive, because it came to really them approving it anyways because they wanted it, but it didn't take away from all the bureaucratic kind of red tape that people had to go through, that developers had to go through to get to that end result, saying, okay, now it's commercial, let me start building. Well, that could be months later and thousands of dollars later.
Yeah, if I was investing in Edmonton, I'd be very excited about this. But also, if because we speak to a global audience, but definitely a national audience in Canada, if your particular city is thinking about doing something like this, support the heck out of it. I mean, give them the support. And, it's funny, Patrick, because we think as citizens and as investors, nobody listens. But I tell you, an email to the right person at the right time, supporting something like this, saying, hey, like, for example, I'll just give you an example of something investors can do. They can take this article, send it to their particular city and say, look what Edmonton's doing. Are you guys thinking about doing something like this? Because this is a great idea. Just doing something like that and them getting 2, 3, 4, 5 emails really kind of sets the tone for, okay, there's an appetite for this kind of conversation. And listen, these people are just trying to do their job. They want what's best for the city, and they may have their own opinions, but at the end of the day, everyone's going to have to get on board with this, because we're not structured to go into the next 100 years of this country the way that our bylaws are structured. So we're going to need some restructuring, and it's great that cities are getting ahead of it.
I love it. Good for Edmonton.
Edmonton zoning complete.